My name's Bill Scream, and I wrote a lot of the music, arranged it, produced it, and recorded it in our studios. We would take the script and start to write some little pieces that maybe went to that sort of idea of what was just in our heads. And then at some point, Will would come in with real actors. We'd do a sort of a scratch track of the scene, with a video thing. We would score a little scratch track to just their voices, and that action. Take it to Will. 2 months would go by and finally come back, as a scene, and they would cut that, oftentimes cutting my music up too. So then we'd have sort of how it was actually supposed to lay in the track, and then we'd start to score more final instruments to that. We had a script, just a piece of paper, which I very seldom read, and I got in trouble for that all the time. We were trying to find instruments that sort of went that kind of direction. We were in a time period a lot of times, so acoustic guitars and banjos and fiddles and harmonicas kind of got in the mix. Of course, the ending song, we're hoping for, well, maybe we'll have a hit record out of this too. And so that all got plugged in, and there's things that get plugged into these things not because it's the right thing to do, but you step back and you go from a marketing point of view, it would be nice to have a great tune at the end. And so we made that attempt. There were some other things within the film that musically, I think, reflected the passions of the time. There was a disco piece in there, which seems so dated, but I think it was probably a pretty current kind of sound at the time. And there were little Beatle sort of musical references in and out of that thing that just kind of represented the passions of the moment. I wasn't doing anything other than working on that film for months, and we just lived those characters. So scoring those transitional kinds of things, those all came from just sort of the kind of time we were having. We were pretty lighthearted folks in the studio, had a pretty good time and really enjoying doing this project. So certainly the fun music was, that we just sit down and just hammer out, things, and we were writing stuff every day for it. Transitioning into those dark things, again, it's a kind of a fun. It's fun, even though it might come off as being sinister from the listener's point of view. From the composer's point of view, you're going, yeah, this is really cool, and you're finding those dark things, and the more you could create those dynamic changes, the more exciting, when the musician is getting chills off of it, you go, now it's working, I spend a lot of my time alone, and so working with other people is always a little bit of a stretch, and in retrospect, I can see anything, that went wrong was probably my fault, but, no, we had a pretty good time, and I think we had actually a really good time. Will and I grew up together, so we have sort of a previous experience that supersedes our professional relationship, and in that regard, it always seemed like I was working with my friend and playing with my friend, and all those experiences were more with just the buddy I grew up with than the film producer or the boss. And that had its ups and downs. I think it gave us a great honesty towards each other, that there was nothing held back, and it let us kind of play with it with some of that energy. Creativity is something that everybody's always trying to put in a box, and the first time it happens, it's that crazy wild thing, and you see all this joy and success, and you go, man, give me that, and I'm going to set that here and do it again, and it's never quite like that. And those first young times were really full of passion and energy and creativity, and staying up all night and giving it, everything for nothing in return expected. And so it was a good time. We had no sound effects libraries at the time. I think we may have had a couple of records, like 33 RPM records that had some sound effects that you'd put on, and stuff. But a lot of the stuff, the clanks and bangs, I remember were, you'd have different things in a drawer, and you'd drop that, and that'd be a sound. And we went through a ton of wind chimes, I remember, to get the sound of those little hearts clinking. What would that sound like when they hit together? And everything was just made. It was invented. Twain was right in the middle of technology changing. We had done some of it. It was completely like just piano and acoustic guitar, and I had a couple of synthesizers, a Moog that didn't have any preset sounds on it. You had to dial in every little sound, and so I was making the trumpets and I was making the strings out of the violins with this synthesizer. And then samplers started to come in, and so we were able to get real instruments. So then I had this instrument, and I remember it was like this big, huge thing, and it was just like having the stove on with all the burners on high. It was just this hot thing and you'd put these little floppy disks into, and they'd have like a second of sampling, and we'd use that for some of the instruments. So the instrumentation got a little better sounding as you go through the movie. But it was right in the middle of having to play everything live and starting to be able to use computers and stuff to create some of the sounds. The love theme to Adam and Eve, da 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 da. That was a piece I wrote, and that got in the film as an instrumental. I ended up writing lyrics to that and using that as my song I sang at my wedding. So that's a special moment in that. And I love the ship scenes inside the airship. One of the first things I did when we started talking about this movie is I made the sound of the ship, and I was really fascinated with it because it sort of reminded me of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the Jules Verne. And so I spent a long time working on that with different kinds of sounds and layers of sounds. And, if you were in this room, what would it sound like? And if you were on the deck, what it would sound like? And I had probably a half hour of just motor sounds that I had made with synthesizers and different kinds of weird things. And so I like that part about the film. Just the interior of that ship is always, and it just looks neat too. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun working on that movie, and it was back in a time when we all were just kind of having fun and experimenting with things. And I don't know if you can have that kind of time again. It was very experimental, and we just had a super time. And I learned, I don't think had I done those movies, I probably wouldn't have the character and what I went on to do, working with soundtracks and stuff. It really was a great education and a learning period. So yeah, all in all, I have very fond memories of those times.